My cousin looked me straight in the eye and said, "We only used it for groceries, just essentials." Then my mom chimed in with, "It's not like you're struggling financially." So I opened up my banking app and checked the damage. $4,280 spread across 17 different transactions. I didn't hesitate. I locked the card immediately, initiated a fraud investigation, and requested a brand new one with fresh authentication protocols. Then, right at 3:11 p.m., my sister texted me, "Why are we getting declined?" I stared at the message for a second, feeling the slap of entitlement. My response was simple, "Because you were never authorized to use it." Left unread. Then everything went quiet. The family group chat, which was usually a whirlwind of recycled memes, church updates, and passive-aggressive nudges from my mom, suddenly went dark. No happy Sunday greetings from Aunt Lydia. No check-ins. Just silence. Then came day 4. That morning was supposed to be uneventful. I'd just gotten back from a long jog, the kind that leaves your legs sore but your head crystal clear. I tossed my phone on the kitchen counter, poured myself a glass of cold water, and fired up my Bluetooth speaker. Lo-fi beats filled the room. That's when I noticed a red banner flashing at the top of my bank app. Unusual activity detected. My stomach dropped. I tapped in, brows furrowed, and started scrolling. What I saw didn't make sense at first, transactions I had no memory of. Charges from Target, Whole Foods, Uber Eats, and something called Boho Baby Boutique? All from the last 3 weeks. I kept scrolling. It just wouldn't stop. 17 charges. $4,280. I just froze. The card they'd been using? It wasn't even my primary one. It was a backup card, mostly for subscription services or the occasional emergency. I hadn't touched it in over a month. It had been tucked away in my locked desk drawer. At least it was, until I remembered something. My mom had recently asked me for a favor. Said Julia needed a cosigner to apply for a new apartment. "She's just putting your name on the form," my mom had promised. "You don't have to actually do anything. She just needs it to get past the first step." And me? Like an idiot, I believed her. Thought it ended there. Turns out it didn't. I froze the card, filed a fraud report, and requested a full review with updated credentials. Then I waited. At exactly 3:11 p.m., my sister messaged me, "Why are we getting declined?" I looked at her text, the nerve of it punching me in the gut. My fingers hovered over the screen before I finally typed, "Because you were never approved to use it." She read it and said nothing. That was it. Radio silence. The group chat, which usually buzzed with nonsense, went completely dead. Not a single comment. Not even from Aunt Lydia, who never misses a chance to send a Bible verse. Then, on the 4th day, it arrived. A cream-colored envelope, my name written on it in my mom's familiar handwriting. She only used that script for birthday cards and guilt trips. I opened it, half expecting an apology. What I got instead was a justification. "My dear," it began, her loops and curls dancing across the page, "we didn't mean to hurt you. Julia's had such a tough year. The breakup, school stress, everything. We just wanted to give her a little support." I stopped after the second paragraph. My chest tightened, not from confusion, but from that old, familiar feeling. I was being used again. Julia had always been the delicate one. The family's precious flower. The one who needed just a little more help. She was 26 going on 12. When she totaled her second car, my parents covered the deductible. When she maxed out her credit card, my mom co-signed for another one and quietly paid off the balance. When she dropped out of her third community college, my dad blamed society for failing to understand creative spirits. And me? I'd been hustling since I was 15, flipping burgers after school, doing spreadsheets for a real estate office during college, and eventually working my way into a solid IT job in fintech. I never asked them for anything. Never needed to. Or at least that's what they always said. "You're the stable one. Julia needs more support." Turns out, being stable made me the easiest one to exploit. A few weeks earlier, I'd gotten a call from Mom. Her voice was syrupy sweet, laced with maternal concern. "Sweetheart, Julia's apartment app needs an alternate payer. Not even a cosigner, just a placeholder." She asked if Julia could use my old Chase card. Just for the form, she said. It won't actually be charged. I should have known better. Now, that placeholder had been used 17 times. Uber rides all over town, $300 worth of Amazon boxes, some overpriced spa in Brentwood, groceries from Arohan. My emergency fund had been hijacked so Julia could sip $12 coconut water and stock up on facial oils. I finally picked up the phone and called my mom. She answered on the second ring, almost like she'd been sitting by the phone, waiting. "Oh good," she said, like this was just a regular chat. "I was hoping you'd call. Can we talk about this like a family?" "Sure," I said. "But first, explain how my card ended up on Julia's Uber account." There was a pause. Then a shaky answer. "We thought it was tied to an old one," she said quietly. Julia didn't realize, and honestly, it's not like you're hurting for money. That line. It's not like you're hurting for money. Like the fact that I saved, planned ahead, and lived responsibly somehow made it okay to raid my finances. Like success gave them an all-access pass to my wallet. I could hear Julia whispering in the background. Then her voice rang out, defensive and loud. "We only used it for groceries. Just basic stuff." "Oh yeah," I snapped. "Then why is there a $190 charge from Violet Flame crystals?" "That was one time," she shot back. "And it was for my spiritual grounding. I was in a really dark place. I could feel my heart pounding. My hands started shaking. "I'm not your sponsor," I said, flat and cold. "You used my money without asking." "Don't say that," my mom gasped. "We're family." "Exactly," I said. "So why does it feel like a betrayal?" That night I blocked Julia from everything. Calls, socials, the works. I froze my credit, added alerts on all my accounts, and sent my mom a message. "You broke my trust. You enabled the misuse of my funds. I'm done." 2 hours later, for the first time in days, my sister Lisa finally broke her silence in the group chat. "Are you all serious right now?" my sister finally said in the group chat. "You drained his card and now you're calling him selfish? This is beyond messed up." Right after that, my dad quietly left the chat. Julia, of course, went the cryptic route, posting some vague Instagram story about toxic family cycles and unhealthy patterns. But honestly, that wasn't even the worst part. 2 days after that phone call, I got an email from my job. Someone had tried logging into my employee account from a sketchy IP address in Glendale. Thankfully, two-factor authentication blocked the attempt. But what really rattled me was this. They tried to reset my password using my old security questions. Julia's birthday, my mom's maiden name, the email address I used back in high school. They were guessing answers that only someone in my inner circle would know. I didn't wait. I filed a police report immediately. That's when everything really blew up. The bank froze every secondary card linked to my name. Julia's phone, which had been riding on one of those cards, basically turned into a useless brick. Next thing I know, my mom's calling me in tears, sobbing that Julia was shattered by the account shutdown. Said she was probably traumatized. She has a therapy session booked this week. Mom cried. "Good," I said flatly. "Maybe she can use it to talk about filing a formal complaint over unauthorized use of someone else's finances." "You wouldn't actually go that far," my mom said, stunned. "Already did," I replied. The following day, my HR department pulled me aside. They'd received a shady phone call from a blocked number, claiming I was being investigated for misconduct at work. It was a coward's move, grasping at straws. Thankfully, my manager knew me well enough to spot the desperation. He ignored it and gave me the heads up. At that point, I was done playing defense. They'd cornered me. So I did what I had to do. I lit the whole thing on fire. It started early the next morning, just before 8 a.m. I hadn't even had a sip of coffee yet. My hoodie was only half sipped, and my hair was still damp from the shower. There was a knock at the door. Figured it was a package. Instead, it was Julia, eyes puffy, wearing a sagging cardigan and those awful leopard print leggings, gripping a half-crushed Starbucks cup like it had wronged her. And right behind her? My mom. She stood there like some kind of general on a mission, arms crossed, lips tight, eyes scanning my hallway like she was about to reclaim enemy territory. "We need to talk," Mom said, pushing past me before I could stop her. Julia shuffled in behind her. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't offer a seat. I didn't even close the door behind them. Let the whole building hear for all I cared. "What's left to say?" I asked. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," Julia sniffled, collapsing onto my couch like a balloon with no air left in it. "It was just a misunderstanding." 17 misunderstandings that added up to over $4,000, I shot back. "You make that in a week," she snapped, her eyes lit up with indignation. "You act like you're some victim, but you're just stockpiling money while the rest of us scrape by." "Stockpiling?" I said. "So now saving is called hoarding?" "Don't raise your voice," Mom snapped, her tone razor sharp. "Funny how it's only not helpful when I start stating facts," I said, walking to the kitchen. I pulled out a folder I'd prepped the night before and dropped it right on the coffee table, hard. Inside was everything. Printouts of every transaction. Dates, times, locations. Even the 2 a.m. DoorDash from Julia's apartment. Chicken tenders and mochi ice cream. "I was hungry," she mumbled. "And the $380 for psychic services?" I asked. "That was emotional healing," she said, trying to sound sincere. "You healed your soul using my emergency fund?" Mom stepped in, like she was trying to de-escalate a hostage situation. "Okay. Let's just take a breath," she said. "We're here because Julia has a plan. She wants to pay you back." Julia looked up at her, wide-eyed. Clearly, this was the first she was hearing of this supposed plan. "What plan?" I asked. "I'll get a job," she said slowly, like she was struggling with a foreign language. "Doing what?" I asked. "Something. I haven't figured it out yet." "You're 26, I said. "So," she shot back. "People take time. You've had over a decade. And somewhere in that time, you stole from me." "Stop saying stole," Mom barked. "It was unauthorized use, not theft. Don't make it sound criminal." "She crossed a financial line," I said. "Call it what you want, it's still wrong." There was a long, tense silence. "You're supposed to be the bigger person," Mom said. "You always were. You've got your life together. You're successful. What would it really cost you to be generous?" That was it. The line that pushed me over. "You want to talk about generosity?" I asked. I walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a small metal lockbox, and set it down hard on the table. It clanked open. Inside, every receipt. Copies of transactions. Screenshots from my credit monitoring service. The police report I filed. "This," I said, "is me being generous. This is me not pressing charges, yet. This is me choosing not to have her arrested." Julia's face went ghost white. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Try me." "That would tear this family apart," my mom hissed. "No," I said. "This family broke the moment you all decided I was your personal ATM instead of your son." Julia stood up fast, face red with anger. "You're not perfect either," she snapped. "You think you're better than all of us because you have a job in tech and a cute apartment and a few bucks saved? You've never had to taste failure." "You couldn't be more wrong," I told her. "I deal with failure every day." "Your failure. Mom's failure. This whole family's failure to understand boundaries. The only difference is, I don't let it break me anymore." They didn't know what to say. They just sat there. "Didn't you say you came here to talk?" I asked. "Well, here's my piece. I'm moving forward. I've already given your names to the fraud department. They'll be in touch. And yes, Julia, this may go on your record. Maybe that's what it takes for you to finally understand that actions have consequences." "You're sick," she whispered. "No," I said calmly. "I'm finally healthy." My mom slowly sank onto the arm of the couch, like the truth had finally cracked through the fantasy she'd been clinging to. "I raised you better than this," she said softly. "No," I replied. "You raised me to be quiet, to give, to never say no. And I've had to unlearn every bit of that." Julia stormed out without another word. Mom lingered at the door. Her voice cracked as she said, "You're going to regret this." "I already regret letting it get this far," I said, and closed the door behind her. Then I locked it, turned off my phone, and sat in the kind of silence that doesn't feel lonely, it feels earned. The next morning, a message came in. It was from my aunt. I heard what happened. Honestly, hearing from my aunt caught me off guard. She messaged me privately, just a short note. For what it's worth, I would have done the same. And I believed her. That same afternoon, HR at my job sent me a formal update. My login credentials had been targeted in an unauthorized access attempt. The system flagged it, traced the IPs back to Glendale, and took immediate action. Turns out, the IPs matched devices linked to Julia. They froze everything, and a digital restraining order was already underway. Corporate doesn't play around. 3 days later, Julia popped up online. She posted some teary-eyed TikTok rant about how toxic money havers were tearing apart families. The irony was almost too rich. The internet didn't go easy on her either. The comments section lit up like wildfire, and not in her favor. And as for the family group chat? Still radio silent. No revival. No awkward gifs. No Sunday blessings from Aunt Lydia. Nothing. I think they all thought I'd crack eventually. That I'd feel guilty and cave like I always had. But the truth? I didn't just keep going, I leveled up. The quiet that followed all that chaos was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. And it was beautiful. My phone stayed quiet. No guilt-laced voicemails. No dramatic texts. Just peace. At first, I was suspicious. I figured Mom was planning something, maybe pulling Aunt Cheryl in for a guilt campaign or sending Uncle Dan to check in under the pretense of being neutral. But no one showed up. No cavalry, no ambush. Just quiet. Pure, sacred quiet. The kind that settles into your bones when you realize you're finally off the hook from everyone else's mess. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for a financial emergency that wasn't mine. I wasn't scanning my transactions or wondering who linked my PayPal again. I just breathed. I worked. I slept. I started thinking about what I wanted again. That same week, I gave my apartment a little makeover. I took down the security cams I'd set up after Julia's meltdown, finally feeling safe enough without them. Upgraded to a better mattress. Splurged on a vintage vinyl player I'd been eyeing for months. I sat on my couch, sipped red wine, and listened to old jazz records like a grown-ass man not living in crisis mode. I picked up journaling again too. Every night before bed, I wrote one sentence that reminded me I was in control again. One night I wrote, "I don't owe anything to people who drain me." Another night, "Love without respect is just exploitation in better packaging." Each entry stripped off another layer of guilt my family had draped over me like a winter coat I never asked for. But the real turning point came that next Monday at work. I was just settling in when Rob, my manager, waved me into his office. He didn't beat around the bush. "Hey, I heard about the breach. Legal's on it. But how are you holding up?" I gave him a half smile. "Honestly? Better than I thought I'd be." He nodded and leaned back in his chair. "You've handled a hell of a lot lately, and you've done it with grace. Between you and me, there's a senior analyst spot opening next quarter. You should go for it." That moment? That was mine. No family drama, no crisis, no cleanup duty. Just me, finally being seen for my own effort, not the family's emotional janitor, but a man standing tall, steady, and completely unbothered. But peace never lasts too long. That Friday, a letter showed up in my mailbox. Not a text. Not a voicemail. A literal handwritten letter. 3 pages. Ink smudged like maybe she cried while writing it. Classic Mom. The first page was all sentimental fluff about how we used to be such a close-knit family and how money shouldn't tear us apart. Page 2 pivoted to Julia's mental health, her anxiety, her struggles, the usual fragile narrative. But page 3? That's where it hit hard. "You've always been the strong one," she wrote. "Julia is lost. If you walk away from her now, I fear it could break her completely." I stared at that line, heart steady. Then I sat down and wrote a letter of my own, not for her, not to send, but for myself. "Dear Mom, I'm not abandoning Julia. I'm walking away from the system you created. The one where I'm treated like a bank account and she gets to be everyone's excuse. I didn't make her fragile. You did by never asking her to grow. I've grown. Now it's her turn. I folded the letter, tucked it in my journal, and never mailed it. Because I didn't need to. A week later, something shifted. Lisa, my sister who'd stayed quiet through this whole mess, texted me, asking to meet for coffee. We picked a small bakery downtown. When I got there, she already had drinks waiting. She looked like she'd been carrying something heavy. I'm sorry, she said right away. For what? I asked. For staying quiet. For watching them drain you and saying nothing. I didn't say much. I let her speak. She told me Julia was spiraling, couldn't make rent, couldn't find work. Mom was trying to get her into a therapy program they couldn't afford, and Dad was thinking about dipping into his retirement savings to cover it. But that's when Lisa said something I didn't expect. That's not your problem, Tal. And you're right to cut them off. I wanted to say I see it now. I see what they did to you. We sat there for over an hour, talking about growing up in that house. About how Lisa always felt invisible too, just in a different way. And for the first time, she wasn't just a bystander, she felt like a sister. A real one. She told me how Dad would brush me off at dinner, how Mom only reached out when money was involved. And then she admitted she once overheard Julia bragging about how she could manipulate me if she cried hard enough. When we left, she hugged me. Tight. You don't owe them anything, she whispered. And if it ever comes to a fight, I'm on your side. That hug meant more than anything I'd gotten from my parents in the last 5 years. But the cherry on top? That came in the form of an email from Julia 3 weeks after the fallout. No subject line. No greeting. Just one short, bitter paragraph. I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. I'm being evicted. I can't find a job. Mom cries every day. Dad barely speaks to me. I hope you sleep well knowing you destroyed your family over some stupid credit card. I read it. Then I hit Arcut. And the wild thing? I did sleep well. For the first time in a long time. 30 full days passed. No calls. No texts. No drama. Just peace. No sudden emergencies popped up that I had to scramble for. No random, hey, can I borrow just a little? Texts from relatives who only remembered my name when their rent was late. And in all that silence, I heard something I hadn't caught in years, my own voice. Not the nervous, filtered version I put on when I was walking on eggshells around my family. Not the fake, polished voice I used to pretend everything was fine while my insides screamed otherwise. No, this was the real me. Straightforward. Unapologetic. It was wild how fast life settled into a better rhythm when I shut out the noise. My apartment suddenly felt more spacious. Mornings slowed down, and my thoughts became sharper. I even started hitting the gym again. Not because someone told me I should take care of myself while secretly draining me emotionally, but because I genuinely wanted to feel strong. I took a solo weekend trip up to the mountains. Hiked trails. Slept in late. Ate pancakes alone at a quiet diner around 9 a.m., smiling into the calm. I started reading again too. Not those self-help or finance books that felt like chores. Real fiction. The kind that drags you into another world and lets you breathe fresh air for a little while. I'd forgotten how much I missed escaping like that without having to explain myself. And then, out of nowhere, I got a message that broke the last piece of guilt clinging to my chest. It was from Erin, my cousin's ex. The one everyone pretended didn't exist after she and Julia split 3 years ago. The one who disappeared from family get-togethers without so much as a goodbye. The one Julia always mocked for being too uptight and too obsessed with money. She slid into my Instagram DMs with just one line. I heard what happened. You did the right thing. Thank you, I replied, honestly surprised. That means more than you know. She answered almost immediately. I was you, 5 years ago. I paid his rent, drove his car, even helped his mom with medical bills. When I finally left, they called me cold and ungrateful. But since then I built a better life. And you will too. That was it. The closure I didn't realize I was waiting for. Not from Mom. Not from Julia. Not even from Lisa. But from someone who walked through the same fire, and chose to walk away. Now when people ask me about my family, I just smile and say, it's complicated. Because it is. And that's okay. They call it betrayal when you refuse to play the role they wrote for you. When you say no and they hear, I don't love you. Because to them, love means obedience. Love means sacrifice. Love means handing over your peace without ever asking for a single thing back. But here's the truth, love without boundaries isn't love, it's exhaustion. I'm not their emotional safety net anymore. I'm not Julia's credit card backup. I'm not the family's invisible ATM. I'm a whole person. Someone who wakes up without that sick, twisting feeling in my stomach, wondering what I forgot to do. Who I accidentally disappointed just by daring to have limits. I built a new routine. I see Lisa once a week for coffee. We don't talk about mom. We don't talk about Julia. We talk about books, dogs, and the ridiculous reality show we both secretly binge-watch. The rest of the family? They're a ghost town in my mind. Sometimes I'll see a Facebook post from a distant cousin about keeping family together with a passive-aggressive Bible verse tucked underneath. I just scroll right past. Because I already kept the one family that mattered the most, me, myself, and the self-respect they tried to bury. Sometimes I wonder if Julia ever truly believed she did anything wrong. I used to obsess over that, needing her to understand, needing her to feel guilty. But now I know understanding is her journey, not mine. I don't need an apology to heal. I don't need her validation to move forward. I just need space. And I've carved it out. Carved it from stone. From fire. From years of silence and sacrifice finally burned away. Let them call it betrayal. I call it freedom. I call it peace. I call it mine.